Well, we're in a series called Jonah's Brothers, and this is part 3. And today I want to talk on lessons from the inside of the whale. That's my topic today, lessons from the inside of the whales. But before I do that, I want to just ask you a question. Do you believe in miracles? Are you sure? Okay, because today you're going to be faced with a miracle that's kind of going to challenge your faith a little bit, okay? And make sure that you find those answers to your faith. I want us to start reading Jonah chapter 1, verse 17, and we'll just take it verse by verse. Now the Lord had arranged for a great fish to swallow Jonah. Now Jonah is a prophet of Israel. God commands him to go into the pagan nation of Assyria, and mainly the city of Nineveh. These people don't worship God. They're evil society, evil community. They kill people, they torture people. And God says, go and tell them of my love. Go and tell them that if they don't change their ways, I will destroy this city. Jonah, on the other hand, does not like these people. They are the enemy of Israel. And so God says go, Jonah says no. Have you ever said no to God? Has God ever said go and you said no? That's what happened to Jonah. And so Jonah goes, instead of going 500 miles east to the city of Nineveh, he goes 2,500 miles west. He gets into the boat, buys himself a ticket, and goes 2,500 miles all the way to southern Spain. But on his journey from Joppa to Tarsus, a great storm comes. And Jonah knows it's because of him. It's because of his disobedience to God. So he says, it's my fault, throw me out. And they throw him out of the boat, and it becomes peaceful and calm. And so this is where the story begins. Now the Lord had arranged a great fish to swallow Jonah. And Jonah was inside the fish for 3 days and 3 nights. That's hard to believe. If you are a rational, science-loving, intellectual, logical person, that is hard to swallow. I bet you if you go to college today and you will tell them that you believe the Bible, some professor will challenge you on that belief. He will say, do you believe all the Bible? And if you say yes, then he'll probably bring up this story and tell you, young people, how can anybody survive? That's nonsense. How can anybody survive 3 days and 3 nights inside a whale? That's a really reasonable, logical question to ask. Have you ever asked hard questions? We as believers, sometimes we're like, I believe everything. It's all by faith, by faith, by faith. And then somebody challenges our faith. And if we never challenged our own faith, if we never asked ourselves these hard questions, for some of which there's no answers, your faith will be shaken. Doubt is not always bad if you go with your doubt to God and not to the world. If you go to the world with your doubts, they will build and give you more doubts and you'll lose your faith. But if you go to God with your doubts, your faith will become stronger, I can guarantee you. I've had a season of about a year of horrible doubts, and I was a pastor already. And I didn't know how, but just this negative thoughts about God, about who created him, where he came from. We're supposed to believe the world came from nothing, but God was there before. And I mean, we all have doubts. Pastor Van said, if you never ask yourself how, your faith might crumble when someone else does. If you never ask yourself how or why, or Your faith might crumble when somebody else does. And so this is hard to believe, logically speaking. Can we agree? Christians, don't be so religious where you're like, no, I believe it. Just come down a little bit. This is hard to believe. A fish swallowing a man. Usually if a fish swallows another fish in a couple of hours, that fish, the acids in the stomach of a fish begins to break apart everything. In a couple of hours, guys. This is 3 days. What did Jonah breathe? If there was a pocket inside the fish, that's all seems illogical. That's scientifically almost impossible. Cover yourself with a blanket and start breathing and see if you can do it for 3 days. Don't do that. You see where I'm going with this? You're not going to last an hour under a blanket. You're going to start suffocating. There's no oxygen there. Where did the oxygen come from? So the next question is Jonah a real historical figure, or is this just a proverb? The Bible has proverbs. Jesus used proverbs. Is this a real story? Well, let's look at 2 Kings chapter 14, verse 25 to see if Jonah even existed. Is there other corroboration in the Bible? Because Bible is supposed to prove Bible. Okay, so let's look at this. Jeroboam II recovered the territories of Israel between Lebo Hamath and the Dead Sea, just as the Lord, the God of Israel, had promised through who? Jonah, son of Amittai. That's the same guy. Jonah, son of Amittai. The prophet from Gath Hepher. So now we see that Bible proves itself that there was a guy named Jonah, and his prophecies were true. They came to pass. Right? There was a guy named Jonah. His prophecies came to pass. So he is a historic figure. But that doesn't prove that the story of Jonah in the whale for 3 days is real. Until we come to the time of Jesus. Let's put Matthew chapter 12, verse 39. And here's what Jesus said. Jesus replied, only an evil, adulterous generation would demand a miraculous sign, but the only sign I will give them is a sign of prophet Jonah. And for as Jonah was in the belly of a great fish for 3 days and 3 nights, so will the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. Stop here. What did Jesus believe about Jonah? That he was in the belly of a whale for 3 days and 3 nights. Can you trust Jesus? I think so. The guy who predicted his death was crucified on the cross, died on that cross, was put in a grave, and 3 days later he rose again, and he lives forever at the right hand of the Father, and he lives forever in our hearts. Can you trust that guy? Yes. He said that Jonah spent 3 days and 3 nights in a belly of a fish. Jesus believed that. If Jesus believed that, I have to believe that. I personally believe that, and it is faith, it's not logic, but it is faith that Jonah did spend 3 days and 3 nights in the belly of a whale. But how can a man, here's the question, how can a man survive in the belly of a fish for 3 days? He probably can't. If I were eaten today, or if you were eaten by the fish today, I don't think you would survive, or I would survive. I don't think for 3 days, think about it, 3 days. any more than a person could be killed, crucified, put in a grave, and then rise again. How can a man survive in the belly of a fish for 3 days? He probably can, any more than a person can stay 3 days in the grave and live again. That's why Jesus says it's a miraculous sign. Do you still believe in miracles? I do. I don't think this happens to everybody. I think this was a miraculous thing. Just like Jesus raised Lazarus from the dead 3 days, right? Just as God raised Jesus from the dead, those are miracles. You can't explain those with science. Okay, people try, but you can't explain that. That's just a miracle. So I believe it happened. Jonah had a crazy experience. I don't think anybody can say, I was in the belly of a fish for 3 days and 3 nights, and here I am. But he did. There's no point in trying to explain it scientifically any more than the miraculous signs of Jesus' ministry. Jonah cried for help, and God saved him miraculously with a fish. Now let's keep reading. Chapter 2. Chapter 2. Then Jonah prayed. And this is the first time we see him praying since God called him to go to Nineveh. Usually you would think a prophet would be praying a lot, right? No, not this one. He's running. The people on the ship were praying when the great storm came, but not Jonah. He's so stubborn, arrogant, rebellious. Throw me in the water, he says. I would rather die than go to Nineveh. And here's where I know Jonah couldn't swim. Can I prove to you that Jonah couldn't swim? Look at verse 2. Put verse 2 on. He said, I cried out to the Lord in my great trouble, and he answered me. I called to you from the land of the dead, and the Lord heard, and the Lord, you heard me. I'm still trying to get back from vacation into this preaching mode. I'll get it by the second service. Okay? So, Jonah is quoting Psalm of David, actually. This is what David wrote. I cried out to the Lord in my great trouble, and he answered me. I called you from the land of the dead, and the Lord heard me. Here we see Jonah is between a rock and a hard place. And he says, and here's what people do when they're in this kind of position. They get even more angry at God, and they said, I would rather die than believe in you, or they humble themselves. We humble ourselves and say, I surrender. And that's where God leads me. Either I go against you and I die, or I surrender. And Jonah is a Jew, so he's smart enough to understand, I'm going to surrender because I want to live. Now, watch verse 3, and I'll prove to you that Jonah is drowning. You threw me into the ocean depth, and I sank down to the heart of the sea. I'm telling you, he couldn't swim. In those days, not a lot of people could swim. There were no swimming lessons. Sea was where the monsters were, so you didn't go there. You tried to stay away from it as much as possible. Okay, but watch this. I sank down to the heart of the sea. The mighty waters engulfed me. You see that? I think this prophet couldn't swim. He was a preacher. Okay, imagine walking on that board, pirate ship board, and then jumping off. And if you can't swim, what's the first thing that happens when you hit water? You sink. How deep? I don't know if all the way, but 4 or 5 feet. Right? You go deeper, you go at least maybe your own body if you can't swim. Jonah couldn't swim. Plus, we who know how to swim and dive, we could probably hold our breath for 2 minutes. For example, can I brag a little bit? I can hold my breath more than my kids can. And I could dive in almost any pool and go under and come out on the other side and then come back halfway all in one breath. Come on, sweetie, come on. That's true. Baby, am I right or am I right? Come on. Okay, just a little bit of bragging. I can hold my air because I've never smoked in my life. I mean, I've tried cigarettes, but I've never, smoked for a long period of time because my parents caught me. And I got whooped when I was 11 years old. And that fixed the problem. But yeah, I could dive almost, any size pool easy. It's easy. But Jonah, believe me, yes. Come on. You want me to show you? Okay, no. Prove it. But here's what I imagine. People who don't know how to swim well, when they jump in, they don't know how to hold their breath for a long time. And so they start to panic. And he jumped into tumultuous waters. He jumped into the waves and wind and spray. And he wasn't fighting for a long time. He sank like a rock, guys. Jonah sank like a rock. And he says, you threw me into the ocean depth. Did God really throw him there? When we mess up and we want to make a good excuse, like if we embarrass ourselves, we want to say, God allowed that. God embarrassed me. Because it's easier to blame somebody else. Okay? In order for us to even be sane sometimes, this is what psychology tells us. Sometimes we have to blame others so we can be sane ourselves, because the mess we got ourselves in will drive us crazy. So we blame others just to have some sanity. You threw me into the oceans, and I sank down to the heart of the sea. The mighty waters engulfed me. I was buried beneath your wild and stormy waves. Told you, couldn't swim. Okay? And then, finally, Jonah is like, I believe he was terrified. No breath to breathe. Water filling in his lungs. Maybe he was already filled with water in his lungs. Then I said, "Oh Lord, how can you speak underwater?" Sometimes people say you only can pray with your words out loud. No, you can pray in your mind as well. And I believe Jonah is praying in his mind. And here's what he says: "Oh Lord, you have driven me from your presence, yet I will look once more towards your holy temple." Keep going. "I sank beneath the waves, and the waters closed over me. Seaweed wrapped itself around my head. I sank down to the very roots of the mountains." He probably saw something at the bottom that people never seen before, because people didn't have diving equipment. And if you've went scuba diving before, you'll see there's mountains, underwater mountains. We went scuba diving, and well, I did, yeah. You were just in a boat, I think, right? Okay. And there's mountains, and it's beautiful. And here's what he says: "I sank down to the very root of the mountains. I was imprisoned in that earth, whose gates locked shut forever. But you, O Lord, my God, snatched me from the jaw of death." And here's where I think he sinks down to the bottom of the ocean, and this whale, whatever this fish, great fish, comes and goes and swallows him. So actually the fish was salvation. You might think that your whale of a problem has swallowed you because God hates you and he wants to hurt you. But sometimes the whale is your salvation. Sometimes the problem you're in right now is your salvation. It's making you better. It's sharpening you. It's changing you as a person. Whales are not always a problem. They seem like a problem. They seem like they're no way out situations, but many times they're salvations. Maybe you feel today like you are in a whale. Maybe you're squeezed. Maybe there's not enough air to breathe. Maybe you feel like it's darkness all around and you're going to die. But because you're not dead, there's still hope. Listen to me. If you're not dead, if the fish swallowed you and you're dead, well, no hope. But as long as you are alive today, and those of you who are watching us online, as long as you're alive today, God has a plan. He's trying to do something in the whale. For Joseph, he was trying to do something in prison. For King Nebuchadnezzar, when he went nuts, remember, and became like a wild animal, God was trying to do something in that time, in that season. If you're not dead, God is at work, even in the hardest of the circumstances. Yesterday I went and visited our brother Jim. And by the way, he's doing better. He says he loves you and misses you. He says he wishes he could be here. But I looked at his situation and I'm like, Lord, that's like a whale of a situation. But God is not done. So keep praying. His senses are coming back to him. And keep praying that God would just deliver him so he can do what God called him to do on this earth. Amen? Yeah, let's... So he cries, I was imprisoned in the earth whose gates locked shut forever, but you, O Lord, my God, snatched me from the jaws of the death. Okay? As my life was slipping away, I remembered the Lord. See, as the life was slipping, I think he was filled with water in his lungs. I remembered the Lord. Don't be too proud to remember the Lord. Here's what a lot of people I hear say, Pastor, I don't pray to God, so it would be hypocritical for me to pray to him when I'm in trouble. No, you would not be the only one. You would be the norm. We're all sometimes so far from God, and so I remember the Lord. When you're in trouble, young people, when you're in trouble, life is long and it's short too, but if you're in trouble, no matter what situation you are in, call on the name of the Lord. Parents, we need to teach our children that even if they are rebellious against God, and some, I've heard stories, have overdosed, but yet their mind was still, and they couldn't speak anymore, and they said they called on the name of the Lord with their mind. Some of you are like, no, I can't call, I can't say nothing. I'm in the water, whatever. No, call on the name of the Lord. Just saying, Jesus, save me, forgive me, with your mind. Just like that, call upon. You never know. It's only, we're kept by his grace. And so, there's been times in my ministry I wanted to leave it all because life got so hard. I was in that whale where I couldn't breathe, and I wanted to be done with this all because I thought it would be easier outside from God. And sometimes all you can say is, Jesus, help. Sometimes that's all you can say. I remembered the Lord. I heard people who wanted to commit suicide, and as they were laying there, who popped a lot of pills, was laying there, and suddenly fear and cold started taking over them, and they began to call upon the name of the Lord in their mind. And some warmth started coming back to them. We hope that none of these things will happen to us, our children. We hope. But we do have to teach our church, our children, that no matter how far from God you are, no matter how much you have messed up, even at the last moment of your life, call upon the name of the Lord. Now, it's better not to be in that situation. Would you agree? It's much better not to be overdosing or on drugs, but if you ever are, call upon the name of the Lord. It's better to call upon him when everything is good. But even if you are in the darkest moment of your life, and it is your fault, it is my fault, it was Jonah's fault. He got himself into the situation. He remembered the Lord. Call upon the name of the Lord and be saved. And my earnest prayer went out to you in your holy temple. Okay, I'm going to stop right here. God is sovereign, and Jonah is stubborn. So, when we are pressed in life, you can do two things. You can call upon the name of the Lord, or you can go against him. Pastor Anthony had this great example about the sword, and he wanted me to show you this. Pastor Anthony, bring me that sword, brother. Okay, take the cupboard off, yeah. All right. I wanted this to be so vivid so you'd know. Going against the will of God is like going against the sword. Okay? Come on. Yes. How far can you go?
About right there.
You sure?
Yeah.
Try going further. Step at least 5 inches. No, not your foot. Your body. You can. You remember when Saul was coming on the road to Damascus and Jesus appeared to him? And he says, Saul, Saul, why are you persecuting me? It's hard for you to go against the spear. That's what it's like going against the will of God. Listen, young people, this is what it's like. Can you take a picture? Oh, he is doing it already. All right. Notice, he can't get any closer. That's it. All right. How far can you go? There you go. Give him a hand. When you are faced with what Jonah faced, he really messed up. I've messed up. He really fell on his face. He really embarrassed himself. Guys, imagine how much shame Jonah is feeling here. A lot of times people don't come back to God because of shame of what they've done. A while back, I behaved some way. I was rude. I was short with people. And I knew I was wrong. And the Lord put me in this thing, and I'm like, I can't believe I did that. Ever say that to yourself? I'm supposed to be a pastor. And I can't believe I did that. Ever? I'm supposed to be a Christian. I'm this man or woman of God. And look at me. And I think the Lord allows these situations. Especially for people like Jonah. Especially for those who are achieved in this world. And Jonah was achieved. When he speaks, his words come to pass. And when he found out that this word will not come to pass because God is gracious, he said, no way. That's going to ruin my reputation. And I'm not about to ruin my reputation. Sometimes God will lead you to places that will ruin your reputation. And here's what the option is. The option is to go down or to stand and try to go against the spear. How far can you go against the spear without hurting yourself? Not very far. And so I knew I started playing a victim, of course. I messed up, but I started playing a victim. How come nobody's on my side? I do so much, but nobody's on my side. Played a victim. So I went even further. I call all my pastor friends, like national ones, you know. I texted them, hey, can I talk to you in a few minutes? One calls me. And I said, well, here's what happened. And I thought he would be like, man, you know, it's their fault, you know. He's like, listen, man, just apologize. I don't think I did anything wrong. I was just a little short. That's okay. I didn't cuss, nothing. Just apologize. I'm successful. I'm achieved. I don't apologize. That was one thought. Come on. Jonah is successful. He's achieved. His word comes to pass. Jonah, just humble yourself. Just go down. Just kneel. Take a step back. Two options. So I call another one. Call Tom Stammen. Tom Stammen is like, he's so awesome. He's so real. Man, I love him. Like, he's great when he does what he does here, but like if you have that personal connection, he's even better. He's more real. He's like, dude, just apologize. And then he's like, well, I just was short with somebody this morning too, so God is convicting me through you now, and we both have to apologize. So just do it, man. Don't fight this. Just do it. But I didn't do anything wrong, so I go to my wife. I'm like, babe, what do you think? She's like, just apologize. And another pastor, he's like, I'm just about to go into the meeting, but just apologize. And I'm like, okay. And you know, when I'm going against the will of God, His peace leaves me. I can't sleep. Honestly, sometimes I feel like I'm on a verge of mental breakdown. Sometimes I've had moments in my life when I was fighting the will of God so bad that I felt I'm going to lose my mind. Now, I'm not saying that people who've had a mental breakdown are going against the will of God. No, that's not always the case. But in some cases, I believe it will cause mental illness by going against the will of God in your life. It breaks something when you go against the truth. For me, I can't sleep good, and when I can't sleep good, I become more short and snappy. How many of you know if you don't sleep, you can lose your mind? Yeah, from sleep deprivation. So just by not sleeping good, you're going to go crazy. And so I called the person. I said, I'm sorry. And he's like, oh, don't worry, dude. I understand. You know, it was a business situation. He's like, I understand. That's business. I know you're a good businessman, so that's fine. I'm like, no, but I acted wrong. Forgive me. And after that, we started joking on the phone. Everything was great. And the peace of God came in, and my mental state was restored. My mind balanced out. Or I could have still been fighting that today, that unforgiveness today, whatever it is that you're fighting today. Jonah was smart enough to kneel. One more story. I was sitting across of a young husband who was going through marital problems in frying pan. I remember the seat we were sitting in. And he was telling me how his wife just won't obey him, how his wife just won't change. And I was sitting there listening to him, and I kind of knew the situation. And I said, dude, I just feel like telling you right now that you need to just accept what it is right now. Just take a step back. Maybe she is wrong, but just take a step back. For example, if you're fighting somebody with swords, and they're about to kill you, but you have a way to retreat, regroup to fight another day. But some people are so stubborn, that man pride, that human pride, no. I'd rather be mentally ill. I would rather be dead like Jonah. I would rather have no peace. I would rather be angry and short and snappy than to take a step back, to retreat, to regroup, to fight another day. This man was sitting, and I was pleading with him. I said, listen, take a step back. Just accept her the way she is. If she never changes, just accept her the way she is. And he said, no. I can never accept her. She's not a perfect woman, like he's a perfect man. Today, this was 10 years ago, today, he lost his family. He lost his driver's license. It's like the worst. Lost his family, lost his driver's license. I'm kidding, of course. He lost his children. He has a judge put an order where he can't see none of them for years now. And I remember sitting, facing north, he's facing south. I remember moments like that. And I was pleading with him, take a step back. Just take a step back. And I told him these words. Sometimes you have to take a step back to make 3 steps forward. And that's what Jonah's story teaches me. As I become more achieved, more successful, more blessed, and I have been blessed, I'm not ashamed. I've built things. I'm not ashamed. God will allow these kind of things where I fall on my face, embarrass myself, humiliate myself, and He'll watch. What will I do? Will I go down on my knees and say, I surrender? Or will I be so proud? I'm too successful. I'm too achieved. I'm not going to do that, God. What will you do? We all are Jonah's brothers. We all follow the way of Jonah. We are Jonah. And today maybe God is squeezing you a little bit in the belly of that whale. And you're like, what should I do? Well, you can't hide and you can't run. You are stuck now. Some of you are runners. But in the belly of a whale, you can't run. And so God says, either kneel or stay here. And we know that Jonah repents and the whale spits him out right on the shore. And he goes and does great things. And history tells us that about 400,000 people were in that city of Nineveh, were saved because of his message. When God says for you to do something for Him, it's not just about you. Sometimes it's totally not about you, except to make you a better person, better man, better woman of God. Sometimes it's about other people. Most of the time it's about other people. And so today, in your heart, just say, Lord, I surrender. I'm not going to be the Jonah. I surrender. I surrender to your will. I trust you to do what you want to do through me and in me. Hallelujah. Did you enjoy this message?
Thanks for tuning in to New Life Sermon Series Online. If you're blessed by these messages and are interested in helping spread the Word of God to others, make an investment today. You can give at newlifechurchsf.org. If you have a story or a testimony to share, let us know on our website as well. We hope you have a blessed day and enjoy today's message by Pastor Alex.